From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your weekly intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Charu Sharma, this week in the magnificent pink city of Jaipur.
Hello, it's Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney.
And I'm Nikesh Rughani in Leicester for the BBC.
Nikesh, good to have you on the show. On this week's Stumped, we're going to look ahead to the Women's Big Bash final and, of course, discuss news that the former India captain, Rahul Dravid, will continue as the head coach of the national side. Now, this week sees the climax to the 2023 Women's Big Bash with Adelaide Strikers taking on the Brisbane Heat in the final. The Strikers secured top spot with an impressive 11 wins out of 14 and go into the final with 5 consecutive wins. But, of course, the Brisbane Heat are not too far behind either. They go into the final with quite a momentum themselves with 3 consecutive victories. So, Jim, how would you rate overall this year's WBBL competition?
It's been very competitive and very attractive. And it's also filled something of a hole at home with the World Cup going on in India. And really the only other major competition you could say alongside it, although it stole the start before the Sheffield Shield got going, is in fact the Sheffield Shield. So they've been able to occupy a space, a lot of credibility, a lot of people going along to watch, and they're doing that on television, listening to ABC radio. So it's gathering a following, and it's been helped by the fact that this will be one of the latest starts of an international season we've ever had in Australia. When you consider normally we have a test match somewhere in November, we're not getting one until the 14th of December against Pakistan. So they've done an excellent job in finding a spot and giving huge profile to the game of cricket as well as to their own illustrious competition.
Well, good for the WBBL. Now, it might have had more attention had Australia not won the World Cup. I suppose that's taken a bit away from the WBBL. Nikesh, the games were played at the SCG and the MCG over the weekend for the first time since the tournament moved to its own October-November window from 2019, with 2 more, of course, hosted by the Adelaide Oval. Now, there have been calls for big stadium weekends to move sooner in the season. What do you make of that?
Look, firstly, I think it's absolutely wonderful that they are getting to play in those big stadiums and they're getting decent crowds as well. Of course, you know, you're not going to get anywhere near a sellout. And sometimes playing in a stadium like the MCG, it might look like there isn't a great attendance, but that's because the capacity is, 90, 100,000, something like that. So even if you're getting 20, 30,000, it's a great stage to play any cricket on. And for the WBBL to be played in those stadiums, I think it should happen more often. It obviously gets the women used to playing on those big occasions. Look, Australia's women have played in front of massive crowds anyway. The national team, you think back to the T20 World Cup final against India a couple of years ago, and that record-breaking crowd at the time as well. So there is a massive appetite for women's cricket, not just in Australia, but around the world. We saw that with the WPL in India, which took place for the first time earlier on in this year. And that had its own separate window, and that was played at some big iconic stadiums in and around the Mumbai area, and hopefully that will be spread across India as well. So I think it's a great thing. Look, you know, some of these grounds, SCG, MCG, Adelaide Oval as well, fantastic. And yeah, the more I think that these women can play in front of these big crowds, the more they get used to those high pressure situations. And, you know, some of the foreign players coming in, perhaps who haven't played in front of those big crowds, it's a great experience for them as well. You know, players from Sri Lanka and other countries that are involved in the WBBL. It'd be great for them when they then go and play on the national stage, play in these world events as well. They won't be as sort of taken aback by the pressure of those situations of playing on the biggest stage. This is all great experience for them.
Also, Jim, the group stages, as you said, did produce some fantastic cricket, some very thrilling encounters as well. But what about the individual stardom of, say, Beth Mooney, who got, 539 runs in 14 innings? And, of course, Sophie Day, who took, 27 wickets? So these are startlingly fabulous performances.
But they're not in the final, you see.
True.
It's great. Grace and Laura Harris, they're the names to watch out for the Heat. I mean, the Heat are on, well, they're on fire going into this final. That was a stunning performance, well, both performances, the eliminator and then the semi-final. And Grace Harris was part of that, but also her sister, Laura, who's come back into the side after injury. And they've had these very, very strong performances. Ninth highest score, I think, in the history of the WBBL, 197, to win that semi-final. A huge effort at the Wacker. So, if they don't have jet lag from going to Adelaide from Perth, and they're on their best behaviour, they're going to give the Strikers a bit of a touch-up potentially if a couple of these players get into rhythm. So it does shape well. I think Grace Harris was number 2 on the run scoring for the season, and she showed at North Sydney Oval earlier in the year when she bashed 100, and again the other night, that she is a match-winning player. So there's a lot to look forward to in this final, and a little bit of edginess about an accusation of arrogance going from one team to the other out of last year's final around Shiva Brunt and Grace Harris. So, yeah, we need a bit of an edge, and hopefully they pull a very good crowd at the Adelaide Oval. And there's nothing else happening in town, so let's get along and support the Adelaide Strikers for that occasion on Saturday night.
Yeah, well, edges and needles are always good for drawing the crowds, and I hope you have a really bumper crowd for the weekend final. But also, Nikesh, quite obviously, most of the stars are from Australia. It's their home condition. But how about the player of the tournament, who was not even picked up in the initial draft? Jamari Atapattu, what a fantastic performance. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, she has been one of the stars of women's cricket for a few years now. And, she basically holds this Sri Lankan team, the national team, together with her performances. I mean, she almost single-handedly made them competitive against England earlier on this year on that tour of England as well. Look, she's 33 years old. She's, I suppose for a batter and as a leader, she's in the prime of her career at the moment. She's scoring lots of runs, in the WBBL, a couple of half centuries, a couple of scores in the 40s as well. But it's more the impact that those scores have had and the rate at which she's scored and the situations that she's scored those big runs in as well. She's been really consistent throughout. She chips in with a wicket or two as well with her off spin, which is always very useful. And she's a leader. Look, she's a senior player in the women's game. As I say, she's been around a number of years now, vastly experienced on the international circuit. It's amazing that she wasn't initially picked up. I can't quite believe that myself. When you look at the women's game, there's not many better than her at what she does for any side that she plays. So, look, she got her opportunity, and it's about it's almost a metaphor for life, isn't it? Sometimes you're not going to get the breaks, but when you do get those breaks, doesn't matter how it comes, you make the most of it. I'm sure we've all been there in our broadcast careers as well, where you get that one little opportunity and you've got to get in there and you've got to make the most of it. You've got to show people exactly why you deserve to be there. And she certainly deserves it. She's one of the absolute stars of the women's game, and long may it continue. She's probably got a good few years left in the tank by the looks of it as well.
Yeah, she's a really tough cricketer, and good on her. I don't think she's going to be left behind in any draft around the world anymore. Well, the men's 50-over World Cup may be over, but some of the Aussies are still in India as they're playing a 5-match T20 series right at the back of the World Cup final. More on that in a while. At the time of recording, it's 2-1 to India in some very high-scoring matches. And it was once again that man, Glenn Maxwell, who starred in the third T20 with the bat. He hit the joint fastest T20 century for Australia and smashed an unbeaten 104 from 48 deliveries, which included many boundaries, 8 fours and 8 sixes. He hit the ball a long way on his day. Okay, Jim, it seems whenever Australia need a hero, a Maxwell stands up.
Oh, thanks, yes. We're not related, actually, but
I know.
Although I did say to him, I think if you go back to Robbie the Bruce in the 14th century, you'll probably find a connection between us. But at the moment, has there been a greater player in the history of the game on one leg than Glenn Maxwell when he had those cramps the other day, making it a double century? He is extraordinary. It's a pity in some ways we haven't seen more than fleetingly the quality of this batting even in a slightly suppressed state in Test cricket. I know he got 100 in India some years ago. Where it goes from now is interesting. He's sort of getting towards the end of it, but when it comes off, as it did the other day, what did he get? 18 off the last 4 balls to win the game. It is extraordinary to watch. I don't think there's anyone in the game who has a deadlier ability to play innovative shots like the scoop, reverse over third man, that sort of stuff, than Glenn Maxwell. So where it goes from here is going to be fascinating. I think he's going home, and a few others are too. They've decided that perhaps after 3 games, well, give some of the young fellas a run leading up to next year's T20 World Cup. Do you have to examine the worthiness of this battle taking place a bit like a hangover after the World Cup? So, and that's why a number of the players have gone home, and, well, most of the better Indian players haven't been playing, although their performance has underlined the depth that India have. Gaikwad's 100, particularly the other day. So, yes, it's a show for some bodies, but not the best bodies from the sound of it.
Yeah, I wonder why Glenn and a couple of others are going back, because don't you want to win the series? Surely you want to after winning the World Cup. But anyway, Nikesh, one of the stars of the show so far has been the very storied Yashas Jadhav. I wonder if you remember his story of from absolutely nothing to where he's come in the last 3 or 4 years. The 21-year-old scored the quickest of the 3 half centuries in the second match was registered by India's top 3. And he is already, of course, an IPL star, as we well know, with the Rajasthan Royals, and holds the tournament record for the fastest 50 in only 13 deliveries. Magnificent. If you read up a little more about him, he's still very young, though. Your thoughts on his incredible ability with the bat?
Yeah, incredible ability with the bat, and just a really impressive young man. I've interviewed him for the BBC previously, and he just, for somebody so young, he's so humble. He's so grateful for everything that he's got. And as you say, he came from absolutely nothing. Lived in a tent on the Maidans of Mumbai, and sort of, had to sort of live with the ground staff there at the Oval Maidan, and sort of try and make his way, moving thousands of miles away from his family at a very young age, just to pursue that dream of being a professional cricketer and one day playing for India. So look, it's come true now, and he doesn't seem to have just been satisfied with, okay, I've made my India debut, I've sort of reached my pinnacle of my dream. There's a lot more to come from him. And look, he's a left-hander at the top of the order. He's got that elegance about him. He's got the power game as well. He's got everything.
Yeah, well, there's also some news confirmed now, of course, that Rahul Dravid had kind of indicated that he might want to step away because of, he spent so much time away from the family. He was also not very well received when there was all that, call it experimentation with the Indian team before the 50 World Cup. And then finally, of course, they did very well at the World Cup, and that has made everybody rethink. And he has now officially accepted his contract continuation till the end of the T20 World Cup. So it's not like a long extension, but just the T20 World Cup. So, I'm happy for him because he seems to have found a nice space within the boys. Of course, T20, the team might be a little different compared to the 50-over team, but the nucleus is pretty much the same. Your thoughts, Nikesh and Jim, on Rahul Dravid continuing?
I mean, look, I think Dravid obviously is one of the legends of the game. I think the key advantage that he's got, especially when working with the T20 squad, where there will be some younger players coming into it, is that he's worked with a lot of these guys at both India A level and under 19 level as well. He's got great relationships with some of these players. And even that relationship now that he has forged with Captain Rohit Sharma as well, if Rohit is to lead India into that T20 World Cup, I think that'll be a key relationship. Look, we saw the team morale through the 50-over World Cup. It was fantastic. They were all together. They were all fighting for the same thing. They had that great thing with the fielding medal after each match, just to raise team morale and have something to look forward to, something quirky going on with those social media videos and the unveiling of the fielder of the match each time. So it's not just Dravid, it's the entire coaching setup that is with him as well. They're all going to continue in this space until the end of the T20 World Cup. There are reports that Ashish Nehra, the coach of the Gujarat Titans, former India bowler, of course, was approached about the T20 coach's job. He currently lives in Goa. He's living a nice life. He's sort of semi-retired, I suppose, because he works in the IPL. which is a couple of months a year, maybe a couple of other months of planning and things like that. But generally, he's living out a very nice life at the moment. I don't think, reports suggest that he was quite happy just to stick with the IPL and politely decline the India job as well. So, given all that, I think Dravid is probably the man for the job, at least for the next tournament. And then it's time for the BCCI to reassess.
I think Nehra is having his cake and eating it too. Wise decision by him because he's doing very well in the IPL. Of course, there was some news about VVS Lakshman, who actually sat in the T20, taking over, but he has clarified that he'd rather just stay with the NCA, the National Cricket Academy, and the India A and the rest of the teams, like Rahul did in the past as well, looking after the younger talent of India. But so maybe he's a future replacement. We'll see. Jim, if I can move on to one of the African teams. Making it to the T20 World Cup. Namibia will compete in their third T20 World Cup overall and their third in a row. For a tiny nation with not too many cricketers, that seems like quite a phenomenal achievement.
Yes, it's a stunning achievement for a very small cricket nation to do this. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these minnows, as we saw in the recent 50-over comp, upstage their superior rivals. And it looks like Zimbabwe are falling more and more behind as we move towards this, looking at the results, Uganda and Namibia. So it's all very healthy for the game. How you get the best structure for these events, I'm not too sure. But it is important, I think, particularly in T20, that more countries are involved. Just a thing on India I need to say to you. You got to sting like a bee. It's no good floating like a butterfly. India get into finals and then they get done. They get done in the head. They got badly done in the head by Australia in that final. They got outsmarted, they got outplayed, outfielded for sure. So, that's the challenge for India going ahead to the T20. Everyone knows they can win anywhere, anytime, but you got to have your head right when it comes to the big game. And I'm sure Indian fans were very disappointed that they didn't do as a lot of people expected and overrun Australia. But Australia's performance was probably the most remarkable white ball performance ever by an Australian team, particularly in a final. It was stunningly good. So India have got a bit of work to do. Whether it's Dravid in charge or whoever, I don't know. But you've got to get something going with the leadership, as well as the ability to play the game and make better decisions. And they got out-decided in that one.
Well, we can't argue, can we? Because only one team had the head for the final. But 1.4 billion people were certainly gutted after that final. I'm sure India will work it out because they've been close early. And of course, we'll see about the T20 World Cup, which, by the way, now is 20 teams, which is fantastic. And Namibia, as we said, once again, qualifying the third time in a row. That was back in, I think, 2021, along with Ireland and the Netherlands. But Jim, thank you so much for joining us. Nikesh, thank you so much. Enjoyed your company on Stumped. And of course, that's all we've got time for on this week's edition. So a big thank you to Jim and Nikesh. And of course, thank to all of you for listening.